Hello and welcome to this Make Explore Art video. In this tutorial I'll show you how to thread a needle, how to do a running stitch, how to do a back stitch and also how to do a decorative blanket stitch. So let's begin. I've got my embroidery scissors, my needle and my cotton thread. First I'll measure an arm's length of cotton thread and I'll use my embroidery scissors to cut this piece of thread. Now here's the trickiest bit, threading the needle. Focus, take your time and guide the thread through the eye of the needle. It may take you more than one attempt, but I promise you with practice and time you'll get so much better at this and it'll become like second nature. Once you've successfully threaded your needle, bring those two ends together and carefully knot them together. I would do a couple of knots, so maybe 3 or 4, just to make sure it's secure in that one place. You don't want your thread slipping through as soon as you start stitching. We'll begin with running stitch, also known as straight stitch. And to start with, I'd like you to push your needle through your fabric so that the knot is secure on the back of the fabric. That was your first stitch. Now, from right to left, pierce your needle through the fabric a centimetre from where you have started. This will give you a fair, even stitch. Guide your needle and thread back through the fabric, making a gap of another centimetre from the opposite side to come back to the front. You are making stitches roughly a centimetre apart, repeating the first steps in a straight line. Once you come to the end of the row, or you've run out of thread, to secure the thread when you want to finish stitching, on your last stitch make a loop and go through this. This forms half of a knot. Do exactly the same again and then it will form an entire knot. This means you're really finished and your thread is not going to come undone, so then you can use embroidery scissors to cut off that extra thread, leaving a bit of a tail in case you need to tuck it in. The next stitch is back stitch. This is another common stitching method that you'll use in your textile lessons. First of all, make sure your knot is on the back of your fabric. Like before, make a stitch around a centimetre long, guide your needle through like for running stitch. Then, as the name suggests, go back to your last stitch and pierce your needle through and then forward, right to left, underneath for another centimetre, creating your next stitch. Once again, if you need to finish stitching or you run out of thread, turn over your fabric onto the back. Make a loop through your last stitch. Repeat this 3 times to make a secure knot, and then use embroidery scissors to cut your thread. Make sure you leave a tiny bit of thread left in case you need to stitch it in to finish your piece. The next stitch we'll look at is a blanket stitch, which is also a decorative stitch and usually used around the edges of a piece. And to start this, it's a little bit different. We want to hide our knot in between the 2 pieces of fabric. There's a few stages to getting the blanket stitch correct, and starting off is really important. So over the top edge of your fabric pieces, create a loop and sew back through that loop. From the back, sew through to the front, leaving a few millimeters gap and making sure you go through this top loop. It will look a bit like 3/4 of a square, and as you keep going, you'll do exactly the same process, so from back to front, leaving a loop, going through that loop. Similarly to the other stitches, make a loop on your last stitch and pull, then a second loop to make your knot. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to Make Explore Art for more tips, tricks and tutorials, and see you next time.